Thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more from me, I have a lot of classes on Udemy. You can find the links to a lot of those in the description. Alright, so welcome back for the fourth part of this goddess series. So we're talking about creativity and fertility of the soul. So we want to think of the goddess as the original artist. So every flower, every river, everything that we see around us is her creation. That's why you think of Mother Earth, right? So when you work with her, she doesn't just work on healing different things. And if you think about it, when you're healing something, you're moving from something arguably negative to something positive. So when you're changing from one thing to another, you're creating something new, creating new habits, creating new ideas, creating a new identity, stuff like that. So you're actually birthing things. Anytime you create something, like when I'm working on a novel, which I'm having some difficulty with, and I've taken a little bit of a hiatus from it recently. So gonna get back into that creative process. So continuing with my notes, she makes you fertile with ideas, visions, creations, and creations of your own. So, creativity isn't just painting or poetry, it's how you shape your life, your magic, your destiny. One of the biggest things is magic is not just what you do at your altar. I have an altar over here. Magic is not just what I do when I'm standing there, right? If magic is changing reality in accordance with will, then we are constantly creating things. We're creating new ideas, we're creating new opportunities, we're creating new thoughts. Any of this creation stuff and the inspiration behind that is arguably the feminine polarity. So, moving on further in my notes. So, the goddess is the source of creation. Goddesses are often creators of worlds, like Gaia birthing the earth. You can think about Tiamat being used to create the heavens and the earth and the firmament. Isis restoring Osiris, and Isis giving birth to Horus, and Saraswati inspiring music and wisdom. You can even think of the muses, right? So people that were into writing and poetry and dance and music and stuff, they were said to be inspired by the muses, which are feminine deific figures. I'm trying to find the right wording. So she embodies the fertile soil from which all new things grow. So any of that inspiration is arguably a feminine trait. So when you have an idea, you have an inspiration, that's the feminine, and then actually executing that idea to put it into something. Like the the feminine side is the idea for a novel, and then actually sitting there and writing it is the masculine because you're taking action on it. So working with a goddess opens you to a creative force as a divine current, not just personal talent. One of the biggest things that I find this kind of stuff to be present is in those really non-rigid expressive things. So like when I play the uke, and I actually just have the case because my ukes are currently upstairs, half of a prop. Um, when you play songs on it, I'm not good enough to just play off the cuff and just go nuts. So I know a bunch of different songs. That's rigid. That's a structure, right? So I know the tabs or I know the chords and I play the song. That's a structure. That's more of a masculine thing. Over here, I got my props set up and I didn't even think about it. I got a didgeridoo, right? Now I could play a song that I know that like other people have composed, and that's once again masculine because it's structured. Or I could just go off the cuff with a bunch of wobbles and different noises and stuff, more of a meditational kind of thing. And when you're just flowing with it, then that is the arguably the feminine side of the polarity. Where did I leave off on my notes? So, and of course, cat. Had to bring her in before she jumps on the laptop. So, let's see. So, working with the goddess opens you to creative force as a divine current, not just a personal talent. So, I know how to play the didge. I know how to do the circular breathing and stuff, but advancing in it and just giving into the flow of it, when you're just going and other stuff and I'm just letting go of structure or letting go of things that I know and I'm just being intuitive about it. You can also find that kind of thing with drumming or a lot of percussion instruments. You can find a lot of opportunities to just go with the flow with stuff. That's the feminine side of polarity. So fertility beyond the physical. Fertility isn't just about children, it's ideas, projects, dreams, manifestations. So the feminine side of stuff, the goddess energy seeds you with that inspiration. You want to write a book, you want to take this opportunity, any of those ideas that you get, even intuition, right? That's more seen as like a feminine trait where the feminine has more of an intuition. You know, a woman's intuition is never wrong, that kind of stuff. That is an inspiration too. You can say intuition, inspiration. That is arguably a feminine trait. And when you get hit with those ideas and those thoughts, that's arguably the divine feminine, because it doesn't come, arguably it doesn't come from us unless you follow the psychological model, in which case that's coming from the feminine side of your own personal polarity. But when you step into that and you decide what to do with it, then you're stepping into the masculine. There's always a polarity with these things. So in magic, your magic begins to feel more inspired, inventive, and personalized. So, you can take one of the books off my shelf, tons of them. I think I have a video where I showcased a lot of them. And, say these words, gather these things, write this down, burn this candle, blah, 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 blah. You'll get what you want. Super structured. Of course, that's training wheels and stuff and a good way to start off. Yeah, sure. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of magic, I want you to step away from those things. I want you to get so good at understanding what the moon phases are and what correspondences go with what colors, what candles, what incense, all that kind of stuff. I want you to be able to step away from that so you can craft your own spells, adding that creativity in there. You're reading off a script and you intuitively get a hit to say more. You intuitively get a hit to, repeat something multiple times. It calls for materials A, B, C, and D, and you add E, F, G, H, and I. Or it says do this at 3 a.m, but you intuitively know that you are better at doing magic at 6 a.m. I'm making this video around 7 a.m. Time's getting away from me this morning. Yeah. So basically the intuitive side and the creative side and just adding more stuff and going with what feels right. And then it turns out to be right, because when you do magic that's more personalized, it's not just making a cake with a recipe. I think I talked about this in another video. You can read a recipe on how to make a cake, but when you get good enough, you can make a cake from scratch. You can add this, that, the other thing, blah, 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 and it becomes an even better cake, right? Rather than just following what somebody else's idea of a cake is. So every spell you do and even transformational journeys and stuff, it's an act of creation. Shadow work is an act of creation because you're creating something new. You're creating new experiences. You're creating a new sense of self. You're creating new identities, stuff like that. So you're creating a new reality. If I change who I am and I step out that door and I go to work or whatever, my reality is going to be totally different than the person I am today. The different things that I'm working on right now, I'm not the same person I was a year ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. God, I'm getting old. Next point, goddesses awaken the imaginative spark that makes rituals vibrant instead of mechanical. I spoke to that point. So rituals and spells gain originality and the soul carrying more power. Once again, the more creative that you get, the more that you get into it. You want to raise energy through a random inspired solo with a didgeridoo. It's going to make your magic better. I've done it. So flowing versus forcing is our next point. Creativity comes through surrender, not control. You have the rigidity of step 1 this, step 2 that, step 3 that. What if you add step 2A, step 2B, step 3A, step 3B, step 3C through F, right? The more that you tap into it and you're like, this feels good, I'm going to go with it, the more invested you are, right? And it's the feminine side of the polarity. It's arguably the goddess energies, I guess you could call it, as my lady would say, that are inspiring you to go deeper and you become more invested. If you go to work, you do the stuff at work, you get paid, you go home, versus you enjoy the work, you know what you're doing, you invest a bit more of your time. And of course, this isn't every day or whatever, but you're going with the flow of things, you're going to have a better time, right? And the goddess shows that inspiration arrives like water, not like a hammer. It flows in. So the more that you connect with the divine feminine, the more you're just going to have an easier time, arguably, with doing whatever you're doing. Because you're just flowing with it rather than this back and forth. Should I do this? Should I do that? Logistically this, logistically that, yada, yada, yada. So magic flows more naturally with less resistance when you embody her rhythm. I think I've spoken to that point enough there. So, next point, healing the wounded artist. Many people carry shame around creativity. I'm not talented, I can't do art, I don't know enough about magic, I'm not a really good dig player. I'm kind of not the best at the uke. I get fret buzzes and stuff like that. Criticism? Nah. That's not a divine feminine thing. Your mom wouldn't want you to criticize you. She thinks you're perfect, right? Same kind of thing. I don't think I'm perfect. My mom does. So, goddesses like Saraswati, Bridget, Hathor, they restore the joy of creation without judgment. So, the next time you step into some creative thing, I don't care if it's dancing, playing an instrument, whatever, enjoy the process. The next time you step into a ritual, enjoy the process. Don't worry about the outcome. Enjoy stepping into ritual, casting that circle, going in there with an intention, because magic works if you make it work. Magic works if you believe in it. One of the biggest, or the first magical mechanic in my book, Magical Mechanics, is the importance of belief, because ain't nothing going to work without you believing that it's going to work, right? You're going to go give like a talk at work or something like that. If you're nervous, you're going to have a bad time. If you're confident, you're going to have a better time. If you're confident that you're able to fix, personal experience, fix the dishwasher, even though you've never done it before, stop popping your claws on me, cat. You can do it, right? So, anxiety, doubt, all that stuff, that's resistance. The divine feminine flows like water. It can flow over that resistance. It can flow around that resistance. It doesn't even think about the resistance. It just does its thing. The amount of times I've sat by water and just gotten intuitive hits like that just from gazing into water, you should try it sometime. So, working with the divine feminine removes blockages, removes creative blockages, and opens more energy for magic and manifestation. If you're enjoying the process, if you're going with the flow, if you're not thinking about the logistics, because the masculine likes to think about logistics, then you can make it work. The amount of times when my lady wants to do something, and I used to step into the, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Being, that rigid masculine stuff. I didn't exactly make it a good time, did I? Stepping more into the feminine is like, okay, we see a vision. How do we get there? How does the water flow from A to B? Does the water worry about flowing around rocks? No, it just does it. So manifestation through the womb current. The goddess teaches that the womb, literal or symbolic, is a cauldron of transformation. So everything is first in a womb before it gets birthed, right? So your ideas, your intentions, the container you have in a ritual, in a cast circle, that's the gestational period, I think is what they call it, where you're putting all the things together, and then with your ritual and whatnot, and then it manifests. It goes from pregnant to birthed, right? Where was I? Every desire, spell, or vision can be gestated and birthed through this inner space. You plan your ritual, you do it, your result is manifested. So the benefit is learning to gestate intentions instead of forcing them to, and that leads to more natural, lasting results. So even if you have an idea to do a spell, sometimes you get into the flow of this stuff. You can get really good at, I want to make a spell for this, I need to do a spell for this right now, and you know exactly what to put together because you've been doing this for 20 years or so, like me, and then you just bang it out, and you know your magic's going to work. Sometimes you might have to sit on it. I want to do a spell for this thing, but I need to think more about what the different angles are, what angle I want to go about it, exactly when do I want to do this ritual, do I want to plan it with an upcoming astrological event, do I want to do it on a specific day of the week, do I want to do it on a specific time of day, maybe I don't exactly have my intention 100% clear, just planning those different things out, rather than I got to do this right now. You get all these ideas together and you flow with it rather than forcing it. Oh, I want to do a spell for X. I got to do it right now. Slowly build it up over time. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I'm trying to think of the way to word this joke. My mom takes a really, really long time to make a good joke. It took her 9 months to make me. So, practical and experiential suggestions. Create something simple, like art, a poem, a dance, an altar decoration, if you're handy, in honor of a goddess. Don't aim for perfection. Let it flow. I don't care if you don't know how to draw. Give it a shot. I don't know how to draw. Create something that would be symbolic of the feminine to put on your altar. Here's a journaling prompt for you. What is the goddess longing to create through me? So the goddess is all about creation. We are vessels, and we are a way through which the divine can create things in this world. The divine wants relationship with us because they can't play around in this playground called, 3D, even though it's arguably 4D. So don't let me argue with hippies. But they want to play around in this playground, and they do that through us. So what are you being pushed towards? What is the divine feminine aspect in you wanting to create through you? Is it a new opportunity? Is it some big career change? Is it finishing your second novel even though you're kind of in a writer's block? Take your pick. And then a visualization practice. Imagine your heart or womb as a fertile garden where seeds of inspiration are planted by the goddess. If you do a meditation where you want to meet with the divine feminine, you can see a garden, examine the different flowers and the different plants that are there, and what do they mean? You might find, rattling off some plants, some bee balm. Well, what does that mean for you? It might mean some bees go to out here in 4D, 3D, 4D. But in meditation, you look at it, you might get a message, right? You might find different things that symbolize different things. A bench, a flowing stream, a bridge in this garden. It can be as elaborate as you want it to be. What do those different things mean for you? It might give you a clue about where you're going, what you're creating, what the aspect of the divine inside you wants to create. So then, once creativity flows, the goddess begins to teach us rhythm and timing. So really work on flowing with things. Don't try to force things. What's your next thing that you got to tackle? Flow into it. How to align our lives with the great cycles of the moon and the seasons. Start paying attention to how your existence goes with, spring, summer, fall, winter, or new moon, waxing, full, waning. Start to get intuitive with those kinds of flowing things. I'm not talking about the flow of a day because that's masculine. Where the sun rises, sun sets, that's masculine. We're not worried about that at the moment, right? Get in touch with those cycles and see what goes on with you. So in the next episode, we'll explore the mysteries of cycles, rhythm, and rebirth. We're going to get into some good stuff. And so, question for you. When was the last time you felt the goddess inspiring you to create something? When did you have inspiration to create something, even small, like a new dish for dinner, a novel, a musical piece, a piece of art, something? When was the last time you felt inspired or driven to do something you haven't done before? Because that's when you're tapping into the feminine creativity energy. So let me know if you guys have any ideas about that down in the comments. As always, you can suggest different video topics, ask me questions, I will answer them. My Patreon members tend to get those kinds of questions answered first, so consider that down in the link tree down there. Magic for Hire, books, classes, all that other good stuff down below, and I will see you next time. Good hunting.